Hi everyone, in this video we're going to think about how can functional skills actually help you and prepare you if you're thinking about going and taking that next step and going for GCSE English. Now this is going to be quite an important video for anyone that is thinking about progressing from level 1, level 2 and going on to GCSE and actually think what is the point, what is the purpose of functional skills and how does it actually help us to make that next step and improve in terms of the academic success that we're all searching for. Now, if you haven't done so already, please can you like and subscribe? It really does help us out when you do so. Now we're going to jump straight into it and think about how can functional skills actually help to prepare you for GCSE English. So what is the purpose of functional skills? So before we think about how we can compare it to GCSE English, what is the main reason why we have to study functional skills and what kind of things does it actually help you to achieve? Well, functional skills provides an individual with the essential knowledge, skills and understanding that will enable them to operate confidently, effectively and independently in life and work. So these are all about helping to develop the tools that enable learners to apply their knowledge and understanding to everyday life. So this is the kind of thing that is helping you to actually take that step within your life to actually pick a career path potentially and to actually think about where you want to go, and it helps to actually improve your skills. Again, English is very important in terms of verbal and non-verbal communication, reading and writing, and also about how you present yourself to others. So all of those skills are the kind of things that we focus on during our functional skills lessons. Now, by the end of this lesson, we're going to cover the following things. So first of all, and we've just covered it there very briefly, we've talked about what is the purpose of functional skills. Secondly, we're going to understand the skills that are developed within functional skills, and we're going to apply these skills to begin studying for the next steps, which will be GCSE English. Functional skills, reading and writing. So if you think about the two main components within the functional skills course, the first one that you'd be looking at would be the reading skills. Now, functional skills helps learners to understand and to comprehend different forms of writing and to practice key skills that are going to be very important, not just in functional skills or ESOL, but also in GCSE English. So this includes things like skimming and scanning, selecting quotations, improving your vocabulary, and finally, understanding synonyms. So if we go through those just a little bit at a time, skimming and scanning, this is probably going to be the first kind of skill that you learn within functional skills, and it's about being able to read a piece of information and actually comprehend what it's going to be about and actually scan it for key pieces of information as well. Now this is going to be really important, not just in functional skills but also in the GCSE, because you do have a reading and writing section for the GCSE English language as well. The next one, selecting quotations. When you're doing this within functional skills, this is largely going to be when you get to the higher value questions, specifically level 2 reading assessments as well, will ask you to select and identify quotations. If you're not too sure what we mean by that, when you select a quotation, it's when you provide actual evidence from the text, so a word by word reference by what they've actually used to get their point across. The next one will be improving vocabulary. Now this is going to be very important. When you're doing the reading assessment, one of the harder questions that come up will be they'll give you a sentence with a key word or adjective within that sentence and ask you to replace that word with a different word to help it make sense. Now what we call these are synonyms, and these are words that mean the same thing as other words but they're ever so slightly different, and that covers the last one there for our reading skills, which is understanding synonyms. Secondly, within your functional skills course, you're going to be looking at writing skills. Now this is the second assessment that you'll do. If we don't kind of think about speaking and listening at the moment, this is the main component that you have to think about really. So it helps you to be confident when writing in different forms. Specifically though, it will help you with things like writing in different forms. So you'll have to write in things like an article, a blog, an email, a letter, a report, a speech, and an article. And there are a few more that get thrown into the mix there as well. If you're not too sure about those, please do check out our other videos that goes through them all in a bit more detail. This is really important because you don't know which one's going to come up within your writing assessment. And then when you do GCSE English as well, there's also a very large writing task we call transactional writing, which is actually worth half the marks of one of the papers. So it may feel like that when you're doing functional skills, you might want to hurry it up and get onto GCSE, but functional skills is really important, really integral in terms of building that knowledge and that foundation so you have the skills and can then apply it to your GCSE course when you get on there as well. The next thing it helps you with is understanding spelling, grammar and punctuation, which again is very important not just in everyday life but also within future assessments. How to use tone appropriately, and again a very important one as well, and also key communication skills. If we think back to the whole purpose of functional skills, it's all about providing that foundation, that good strong knowledge of English and how to actually communicate and present yourself in a sophisticated manner. One of the main things that you can take away from the functional skills course is some of the key techniques that you'll look at within your main lessons. Now, there's an acronym that you can use to help remember the key techniques, and if you've looked at any of the other videos within our channel, then you'll know that the acronym is DeForest. If you're not too sure what we mean by this, don't worry too much because we will go through it in a bit more detail momentarily. So how can these be used for GCSE English? Well, the acronym we're going to use is DeForest. Now, with this acronym, each of the letters stands for a key technique that you need to be able to identify and also use yourself when you're producing your own writing. If you're not sure what we mean by this, or let's say it might have been a while since you've gone through any of these, try and use the hints at the bottom to try and work out which ones are being referred to here. So if we have the first one then, this is something that is believed but not supported by facts. So that's one of the clues or hints given to describe one of the DeForest techniques. Secondly, using language which invokes an emotional response. And finally, using numerical data to support an argument. Now if you want to pause the video here and go through it at your own time, please feel free to do so. We're now going to jump ahead and we're going to go through all of the DeForest techniques in a bit more detail. Class feedback. Check your answers against the ones below. So here we have our DeForest techniques then. We're going to go through them one by one. So the first one, the D, stands for direct address. Now the problem with learning acronyms like this is that sometimes different teachers will have these letters to stand for different techniques. So there might be some variety if you're being taught this in an actual college or school setting. However, this is the one that generally gets used most commonly. Okay, it doesn't matter if you change up any of the letters at any point. What's important is that you're focused on some of the key techniques that you use within persuasive writing. So the first one is direct address. Now this is really important, especially if you're going to do things like a speech and if you're trying to persuade your audience. This is where you're directly speaking to the audience and you'll use words such as you to actually help single them out and get them to think very carefully about what you're trying to communicate. The next one is alliteration. Now this is a fairly straightforward technique. Simply put, all it is where you repeat the same letter 2 or more times in close conjunction with each other. And this just helps to give our writing a little bit more emphasis, almost like you're underlining it or writing it in a bold font. Thirdly, we have facts. Now often there's a little bit of confusion with this because let's say if you get a topic that you don't know much about. For example, you might get a question that asks you about celebrities and social media, and it might be that you don't know much about that kind of topic that comes up. However, you can make facts up. So simply saying a sentence such as, "It is a fact that many celebrities make a lot of money from using social media," is absolutely fine, and that will give you a mark for being able to use a DeForest technique to prove the point of view you're trying to express. The next one, a good way to think about this one is that it's kind of the opposite of a fact. So this is the one where it's an opinion. So it's a point of view on a certain topic or a statement, and it's not actually backed up by any factual detail. The next one we have then is a rhetorical question. Now, if you're not too sure what we mean by this, a rhetorical question is a question that doesn't require an answer. The purpose of it is that it gets someone to actually think about it, and actually have an almost internal dialogue with themselves to think about the point that you're trying to get across. The next one then, the second R, is repetition. Now repetition can be a fantastic tool to use, but you have to think carefully about how you're using it within your writing. So if you have a really key point or a key phrase that you'd like to really get hammered into the audience's minds, then it's important that you use repetition because it will help stay with them long after they've finished reading your response. The next one then, E, emotive language. So this one can be a little bit difficult for people to get their head around, because when we think about emotive language, people think about love and hate and things like that. And even though that is talking about emotions, it's not really what we mean when we talk about emotive language. So emotive language is language that will actually make the audience feel certain thing. And if you think about certain words that we can use, especially in our day-to-day lives, there's a few words that we use that will trigger an emotional response. If I said, for example, the animal has been neglected and abused, those words are very emotionally charged words, and for most of us there, it would get an emotive response because we don't want to hear that the animal is being harmed. The next one then is statistics. Now statistics are a fantastic thing to use. This is where we're using numerical data to support our point of view. And a key thing to think about with this one is that you want to make sure that the percentage or the decimal or the fraction that you are given is got quite a high value. For example, if you say 40% of people who smoke have a serious illness, 40% doesn't show me that that's a lot of people. You want to go with the majority, so 80, 90%, somewhere like that. And again, very similar to facts with this one, you don't have to actually have this to be true. You can make it up, and you can also add a little bit of extra strength to this statement by making up a report or an institution that has come up with this data. A good thing to think about as well is think about some of the universities that are really well known and have quite a high level of pedigree behind their name. So for example, 90% of people who smoke will have a serious health issue. This was a recent study conducted by the NHS, or you could even say by Oxford or Cambridge University. So think about those kind of institutions that would generally have quite a big weighting behind it when you're trying to get your point of view across. And the final one, the T, is a triplet. This is also called a group of three. So this is where you have three words or three ideas that all are aimed towards a common goal. So for example, you could say exercising is a fantastic thing to do because it is fun, keeps you fit, and it's a great way to stay in shape. So I know those last two were kind of similar, but it's just to give you a bit of an example about three things towards that one common goal. If you're still not 100% sure about these, then please do just try and go back over them, practice using them, and the more you do it, the easier it's going to be to actually retain it and commit it to memory. The important thing to note as well is that you don't need to use all of these techniques. What we're aiming for is a range. Especially when you're with functional skills, I'd be expecting to see maybe 4 or 5. And then when you go on to GCSE, I'm looking at more 6 to 8. So the skills that you are learning within functional skills is going to be very beneficial for when you come and you approach those higher value questions within GCSE English Language as well. Look at the questions below. One of them is a functional skills writing question and the other is a GCSE question. Now the purpose of this is that we can actually draw a few comparisons and you can kind of get to understand some of the similarities and the differences between the two. So the first one says the government should invest more money in public transport as there are so many good reasons to use it. Write a letter to the editor of your local newspaper explaining your views on this statement. And you can see here you get 24 marks for content and organisation and 16 marks for technical accuracy with a total of 40 marks. Now surprisingly this is actually the question 5 for paper 2 for the English language assessment, and you can see there that it's not really a very long question. You will generally get a statement like this and then an actual task that's related to the statement. So we have 24 marks for the content and organisation, and what we mean by that is for the content, what techniques have they used? So things like those DeForest techniques that you would have went through within functional skills. And organisation, that means have you wrote in paragraphs, have you thought about different sentence structures and things like that. And 16 marks for technical accuracy. And the 16 marks is where we look at things like the spelling, the grammar and the punctuation, and also being able to use quite complex words and spell them correctly. So all of these are things that you would have covered to some degree within functional skills as well. You can see there that for the GCSE question that this is worth 40 marks. Now for paper 2 that is actually half the marks of the entire paper. So if you're able to excel at this area within English, if you're able to do well with it within functional skills, that's really going to help you and prepare you for the next step of going on and studying at GCSE English. Now we're going to look at the actual one that is used for functional skills, and you can already see there by the size of the box that the question for functional skills actually can seem a little bit long-winded, so it's still good to kind of get your head around because it's all really good practice and things to use for when you go on to GCSE English. So first it says then, it is well known that celebrities use the media to help their careers, but they don't seem to like it when the media covers their private lives. Is it right how the media treats celebrities? How do celebrities benefit from the media, and how does the media benefit from celebrities? Should anything be off limits, or can the media cover everything about celebrities and their private lives? Your task. Write an article for a student magazine exploring the extent to which it is fair that the private lives of celebrities are covered in the media. And you can see here at the bottom, you actually get 27 marks for this question. So even though this question seems a little bit more long-winded, it's actually worth quite a significant amount of marks less than you get for the GCSE English. So even though the questions sound fairly similar in terms of the way they've been phrased, yes, the topics are slightly different as well. You'd still be expected to use some of the skills, and it's all important to do for when you go into GCSE English. An important thing to think about with a question like this for functional skills is to really concentrate on the bullet points that have been given to you, and this will help you to actually narrow down specifically what you need to be writing about. So each one of these bullet points should give you some idea of the kind of things to think about within your exam. Now if you do want to have a go at this question, please do check out one of our other videos that actually answers this question in more detail as well. So the next thing we're going to think about is the kind of questions you have to answer in GCSE English. So if you're currently on functional skills and you've maybe sat an assessment or two, it would be a good idea just to get an idea of the kind of questions that come up. So the first one to be aware of, this is generally the one that you start studying in September. It's paper 1, Explorations in Creative Reading and Writing. Now I will just say that if you are doing a different exam board, there are many to choose from. For example, the one that I'm talking about at the moment is AQA. Now that tends to be the most commonly used one. There are, however, other exam boards such as Edexcel and things like that that may be used. So it's important to check that the title of the exam paper is the same one that you're studying. So even if you are studying with a different exam board, the skills and the type of questions we're talking about are still going to be relevant and good to know before you enter into GCSE English as well. So for this paper, for paper 1, you have 5 questions. The first one is to identify explicit information. And what we mean by that is it's a very basic question where you're just going to read a text and you need to pick out 4 pieces of obvious information. So that is just making sure that you can do those basic skills that we looked at the start of the video when we were talking about skimming and scanning the text. Question 2 is how has the writer used language? Now, when we're talking about language, specifically we mean the language techniques that are used by the writer. Now, DeForest Techniques will help you a lot with this. That will be really beneficial. However, there are also many more language techniques that you will need to familiarise yourself with when you go on to do GCSE English. And these are things like similes, metaphors, and personification. And the list goes on and on. and that can be quite a difficult thing to get your head round as well. With this question as well, you're going to be required to actually select quotations from the text, and again that is a key skill that you would have been able to develop during your functional skills course. Question 3. Now this is going to be completely new to you if you are, let's say, an adult learner and you haven't studied GCSE English before. Instead of talking about language, we're going to have a very similar question. However, this time the focus is going to be just on structure. Now, structural techniques are all about how the text has been laid out and put together. So if you think about a film or a TV show or any kind of book that you might have read, the writer has had to think very carefully about the structure, how they've actually laid it out and presented it to you. Again, if you're not too sure about that and you're a bit concerned about the techniques, please do check out our other videos that do go into it in more detail as well. Question 4. You'll be given a statement by a student who has read a similar extract to the one that you've read as well, and then he will give you a statement on it. Okay, and then you'll have to decide whether you agree or disagree and show your understanding by selecting quotations and also commenting on the methods used by the writer. Question 5. This is one that you wouldn't have looked at if you've only studied functional skills. This is actually a creative writing task. So within this question, you're going to either get an image or you're going to get a statement. Well, you'll actually be given both, but you get to choose which one you want to talk about. Now, this one will be asking you to make up your own story, your own description or your own narrative, and it'll ask you to actually use a lot of the skills that you've used within functional skills to apply it to your own form of writing. Paper 2. Now, if you're doing it with AQA, it is called Writer's Viewpoints and Perspectives. And the first question is going to be very similar to the previous paper as well, would be to identify 4 true statements. So this is just testing that key skill. Can you read through something? Can you understand what is going on? And can you actually make sure that you can understand it and comprehend it in a successful manner? Question 2 will be to write a summary of both texts. So you have 2 different texts to read for this paper. Again, that's quite an interesting thing to note, because if you have gone through functional skills and if you have actually done the reading assessment, sometimes you'll be faced with 2 or even 3 texts as well. So being able to read and comprehend and make comparisons is going to be very important for paper 2, all of which you would have covered within functional skills as well. Question 3 is another language question. So if you actually notice there, question 2 on paper 1 and question 3 on paper 2 are exactly the same. The only thing that is different about it is that on paper 2, the question 3 is worth 12 marks, whereas on paper 1, it's only worth 8. Question 4, this is where you need to compare both texts. You need to think about the methods that have been used and the tone and how they're trying to convey their points of views on the topic that they're speaking about. And question 5, this is very similar to our big writing task that you have to do for functional skills as well. You'll get one question which will be worth 40 marks, and you'll have to write very similar to the one that we looked at a moment ago, which was about the social media. And you need to make sure that you're well versed with many different forms of writing, so things like an article, a blog, a leaflet, a letter, a report, a speech, an article. All of these things could possibly come up. So if you've already studied these things within functional skills, then you would have helped develop the key tools that you really would need to get a really good grade for some of the really big important questions within GCSE English. It's also important to note that within the whole papers, so paper 1 and paper 2, it's 80 marks on each paper, so that's a total of 160, and in order to get a 4, which is a pass, you'll need to get roughly about half marks. So for the 2 question 5s, each of those are worth 40 marks, and with that in mind, that would mean that if you were to do really well on both question 5s, you'd really put yourself in a good position in order to pass. So hopefully now by the end of this video you would have some understanding of what is actually going to be on the GCSE English Language papers, and also understand why functional skills is so important and so vital to actually give you that little boost and help prepare you and understand the key techniques and the key methods that you need to know in order to do GCSE English Language and be successful within the assessment as well. Now, if you need any additional support, the new videos will be added every single week. We have a wide variety of videos, both of GCSE English and also functional skills as well. So if you are looking at making that transition from functional skills to GCSE English, please do check out our videos. We do upload a new one every single week. And if you can't find anything on our channel that seems to work for you, please do check out our partner channel, Bookworm Teaching, for more lessons and guidance on all things English. Thanks ever so much for listening, guys, and if you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe. It really helps us out when you do so. Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye.